bringing the playing conditions at our stadium more towards the league norm. This has been, since its inception in 1992, an extreme park for home runs, but that has only grown as the style of play across the major leagues has evolved over the last 30 years. And really, outside of a one-year aberration in 2001, I believe, these have been the dimensions of this park for 30 years. It has been one of the very, very most extreme home run parks in baseball. I think for any team, for any park to be toward the very, very extreme in either direction, it's a bit of a challenge. And it's something that has posed a challenge for this franchise. And we think that this will improve the playing conditions and the style of play in this part of the park and be beneficial towards us and the type of competition that occurs here going forward. So this project will be completed prior to opening day 2022, and these dimensions will take place now and going forward. So it's something that we are very hopeful about what the effects will be towards bringing this park towards neutrality. It's still going to remain very much a hitter's park is our expectation, and even a hitter's park in particular for right-handed batters will still be the case. But this will bring our expectation is that this will bring the conditions more toward the league norm, so that we're not seeing such extreme outcomes on fly balls to this part of the park as has been the case here over the years. So I want to thank everybody in the Orioles organization, particularly the ballpark ops group led by Greg Bader and Troy Scott, and thank our partnership group and the Maryland Stadium Authority for their support and execution in pushing this forward. I think it's going to be a very good thing for the Orioles.
Thank you, Mike. We'll now open it up to questions. Again, if you have a question, please put your name in the chat and who the question will be directed to, and we'll go through them as time allows. And Conley, if you want to start us off, you can go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, we've often talked about the possibility as far as free agency is concerned and getting, pitchers in here. How much does that play into this decision? And also, overall for you, have you heard that from agents about their pitchers kind of being concerned about coming here and pitching because of the way the ball flies out of here?
Yeah, it's definitely a significant factor in our move to do this. Again, we still expect that this will remain somewhat of a hitter's park, and we like that about Camden Yards. But the conditions here have been very extreme, towards the very most extreme in the league. It's not a secret; it's been the case for decades. And part of having a winning program is the ability to recruit free agent pitchers, and that has been a historical challenge for this franchise. There's just no way around that. So I do think it's going to help going forward. I think the proof will be in the pudding as the games get played here over the next couple of years. We are, since I've been here in 3 years, we've been tasked with taking a fresh look at the entire organization, and that's something that has been an impediment here, and it's something that I think this will move towards helping us in that regard.
Steve Molesky with a question for Mike.
Mike, how long have the plans for this been in the works, and what will that mean player acquisitions moving forward, short term and near term? Does it alter in any way what you're looking for when you consider both offense and defense?
No, I don't think that other than what I expect might be taking us out of the very extreme limits of being a hitter's park, which I think, as I just said, has demonstrated, probably made some difficulties in free agent pitcher recruitment over the decades. I don't think this is going to affect our player acquisition strategies across either category of position player or pitcher. And that has not been part of our thinking. This is something that we've been discussing kind of informally since SIG and and I and Brandon Hyde and this group got here. Those discussions just kind of picked up, and the ideas that we worked through that might be possible both in sort of a short term and longer term horizon. And this is where we landed with the most sensible and most efficient way of neutralizing the park effects here as regards to home runs per fly ball, and really our fair share, so to speak, of home runs per fly ball in this particular part of the park was very out of whack. So addressing this area was a priority. We worked with the design team and our ballpark operations team to figure out what was plausible, and I think we landed on something that we're going to be able to turn around in one off season. The dimensions that we're going to have coming out of this are not unprecedented in Major League Baseball. It's going to be very similar to PNC Park in Pittsburgh in this part of the park, and so we know that it's something that's worked successfully.
Nathan Ruiz, you're up.
Mike, a couple quick ones. How many seats are you guys losing as part of this? And in terms of that home run to fly ball reduction, did you guys have a target percentage in mind for what you were looking for?
I believe that we'll lose about 1,000 seats as a result of this. And then in terms of our forecasts for what's going to happen, I'll let Sig field questions. And I don't think that we'll get into the particular numbers in our forecast, but it's hard to nail that down, given that it depends on personnel and luck and all kinds of things. But we have a very strong confidence that the directional nature of this change will pull the batted ball, fly ball outcomes in this part of the park more towards the league norms, but still on the side of being favorable to the hitters.
Rich Dubroff with a question for Mike.
Yeah, Mike, how much does the fact that most of your starting pitcher candidates for 2022 are left-handed and not right-handed have to do with a move?
I wouldn't say there's anything about this move that is informed by our present personnel in the organization or 2022 in particular. This is something that, has been in place, like I said, for 30 years. Baseball has changed a lot over those 30 years in terms of home run and fly ball behavior. And it's been a persistent challenge for this organization to navigate having such an extreme environment. We felt it was something that we could modify with a relatively manageable adjustment like this, and we think it'll be an improvement overall for Baltimore baseball going forward for a long time. And that made it a easy decision.
Bobby Trissott with a question for Mike. Go ahead, Bobby.
Hey, Mike, thanks for doing this. Any impact on the bullpen in the outfield that this project might have? And do you have any plans to archive those 1,000 seats whatsoever?
My understanding is that the seats, there'll be further plans announced, but that the seats will be made available in a charitable event is what I'm expecting right now. And then the bullpen is remaining as is. So we're working around the bullpen. You can see there's an angle created by that. But again, this is something that exists in other parks around the league, and in particular is extremely similar to that area in Pittsburgh.
Gary Coleman, your question.
Hey, Mike, as far as the earlier question that I don't think was answered, how long has this been in the works? And the 1,000 people that were seated out there, the season ticket holders, what type of options do you know that they have?
Right away, as soon as we knew we were doing this, our sales team contacted them directly, and their seats are being adjusted relative to the proximity, the row that they had with the prior setup, or different options are being discussed individually and directly with them. So we're making sure to communicate and take care of those ticket holders. In terms of the kind of time horizon of this project, like I said, we've been discussing it informally. A lot of that was just thrown a wrench into the works by COVID and just the uncertainty of operations across Major League Baseball over the last 2 years, and worrying about navigating those seasons first and foremost. But the last several months, starting, I'd say probably last summer and fall, the conversations got a little more serious, and plans started to formulate. And obviously we put this in motion now over the winter. So it's, I would say, over the last 6 months or so, it had really crystallized.
Question from Stan Charles. This is for Sig. Go ahead, Stan.
Sorry about that. Sig, I'm just wondering, this is sort of like an old timer's question. I've been around a long time. The ballpark's entering its 30th year. By my count, from 1998 to 2012 and 18 through 21, the pitching staff has been way, way below league average. Has that been weighed into this? Is just that the home runs are part and parcel of bad pitching versus the ballpark?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in order to get the park factors, we'll look at both the Orioles and the opposition, both at home and on the road. So these pitchers, whether they're highly skilled or average or whatever, are pitching both at home and on the road. So yeah, we look at that.
And Connolly, your question for Sig?
Yeah, so if you have watched this team over the years, you look at this as a home run ballpark or a hitter's ballpark, but there are times where ballpark factor has been factored in. Different studies have been done where it says it's kind of neutral or just barely an offensive ballpark. Especially in the summer months, it's obvious that this is a place where the balls fly out. What numbers did you look at to kind of come to the conclusion that this is indeed, an extreme ballpark for home runs and for runs?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at many of the third-party sites that have more than half a decade of data, like Camden Yards is number 1 or number 2. So we're privy to some of the StatCast data, so we can model it a bit better than the third parties, and we're seeing what you described. Like, this is an extreme home run park, if not the second most. And for right-handed batters, it seems clear this is the most extreme home run park. And as Mike said, that doesn't do the team any favors. And we wanted to take this step towards a significant step towards neutrality.
Steve Molesky, your question for Sig?
Sig, does Camden Yards right now rank 1 or 2 in runs scored, both teams per game? And what do your projections tell you it might look like a year from now, with the understanding these are just projections and we'll have to see what the numbers tell us when they play?
Yeah, our work is showing that this is the number 1 or 2 park for both home runs and run scoring. And retrospectively, we could see what these changes would have done over the last half decade and the effect it would have. But going forward, I don't want to give the specifics, but like we said, we expect this to be a significant step towards neutrality. And so much of the final effect depends on everything from the ball that Major League Baseball decides that we're going to use to global warming. So I don't want to get into those predictions.
Nathan Ruiz with a question back for Mike. Go ahead, Nathan.
Like, you guys obviously had a lot of young starters last year who had some trouble in the major leagues. In what way do you see this move helping them and just other pitchers you guys will go through over the course of time in terms of just major league development?
I don't think we're trying to do any favors to any pitchers. We're trying to remove the degree of fly balls that are hit that in most other professional ballparks in America, they come off the bat and everyone feels like that's either going to be a double or it's going to be caught, and then it turns into a home run. It just creates an extreme product that is a little unnatural because of the unique nature of those outcomes that are occurring here. So I think that having close to a neutral park is probably by and large the balance style of play that fans and players enjoy, and that's why those parameters kind of exist across the league, because that feels like the right balance. And we just don't, whether it's toward the pitching or hitting side, we don't want to be, the off the first or second or in the top 5 or something in any direction. And this is a step towards hopefully rectifying that.
Kevin Richardson, your question for Mike?
Mike, will this change the training for Brandon Hyde's guys in left field? And will there be any changes down in Sarasota to reflect the fact that the guys will be playing off the wall a lot more than they have in the past?
Thanks. I do imagine, this will be something that, we try to get our own players some repetitions to get used to since there's some new and dimensions out there. We do have a replica field in Sarasota. We do not have immediate plans to alter that field this spring, but it's certainly something that we'll look at. There's a lot of wind in spring training, and the materials of the fence are a lot different. So there's only so much benefit from altering your outfield fence on a backfield in spring training, but we'll obviously look at that when we get time to do so.
Dan, your question for Mike?
Yeah, Mike, there's always been some whispers that those numbers that were up on the outfield fence weren't exactly true, 313 or whatever it might have been. Did you guys find that when you went through that maybe it was even shorter than advertised? And what exactly are the markers that you're using right now as far as numbers are concerned? What are they going to be in your estimation in the different parts of the wall?
I've certainly, kind of heard those rumors over the years, and we certainly have not found that, nor is there evidence of that. But I do think it speaks to the outcomes that have occurred here. They just feel extreme and unnatural to the players. And a ball leaves the bat, and it's a home run, and no one had expected it to be, nor is it a home run in 28, 29 other major league parks. And the players feel that, and it's kind of a frustrating game sometimes. I mean, obviously it benefits you a lot, but to have half of your games in that environment is challenging. Again, that's the thrust of this move.
And as far as the exact, like the exact numbers per spots?
I believe we've issued some renderings that can probably demonstrate that a lot better than me trying to describe it. Those are somewhat approximate, but we have to leave some room for the occurrences that may take place at the very end of construction, and possible minor tweaks. But I believe very strongly that those will prove accurate.
Steve Molesky, go ahead for Mike.
Mike, 2 quick parts here. Part 1, are there any more changes planned in the future to Camden Yards that will kind of be a complement with this? And secondly, is it your hope in the long term there's a defensive advantage that will be produced here by your guys playing 81 games here and others not?
Great questions. First of all, we're not seeking any type of advantage, but I do think that this might encourage a more exciting athletic style of play in this part of the park. We will have some additional extra base hits, possibly triples, some balls rattling around. I think it'll be very fun and interesting. And it's something that baseball in general needs more of. And I think it will ultimately improve the aesthetic style of play at Camden Yards from a number of angles. So we're looking forward to that. And in terms of future changes to the park, there are a ton of high level discussions going on, sort of way above and beyond the scope of this press event, but the future of baseball here and of this park and the Orioles franchise, it's very, very exciting. You know, it's 30 years old, but it is an absolute masterpiece. Not just one of the best parks in baseball today, but one of the best parks in the history of Major League Baseball. But you've got to renovate and reinvest, and those things will be happening over the next several years and decades. So I think we have a lot of exciting stuff to look forward to here. But you know, this is something on the immediate term with play on the field that I think the sooner the better.
We'll go back to a question for Sig from Nathan Ruiz. Go ahead, Nathan.
Hey, Sig, what all did you guys consider before you landed on moving back the fence? What other options did you guys look into?
Yeah, well, with the goal of, you know, making it more neutral, we looked at a few things, moving home plate back, but we were pretty much within inches of the furthest home plate being closest to the stands anyway. We looked at where we differ from the rest of baseball and where we're experiencing more home runs. And sort of from that pointed to the left field wall as being the most practical way of taking this step towards neutrality.
Question back from Mike from Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
Hey, Mike, over the past couple of years, did you talk to any players about this, or did any pitchers come to you and suggest a move like this?
Yeah, last season, we talked to coaches and players about the possibility of altering the dimensions, and I've talked to former players here about it as well. I think, as I said, everybody agrees that this is, I mean, objectively and subjectively, it's an extreme home run environment, in particular this part of the park.
Time for a couple more questions. Stan Charles for Mike. Go ahead.
Mike, in listening to your answer to Steve Molesky's question, it dawned on me, is this at all an MLB pushed initiative at all? Because your answer to Mike was about, to Steve, was about creating more action, or was this an Oriole only decision?
No, this was initiated by the Orioles baseball operations department, but we vet and get the approval of Major League Baseball before any type of changes to the playing field, and they've fully signed off and are on board with the changes, but in no way reached out to us about this proactively.
Nathan with a question for Mike. Go ahead.
Mike, in terms of the bullpens remaining where they are and just the dimensions that creates, was there any concerns with player safety or anything of that sort in terms of how that's designed?
Obviously something you'll keep an eye on, but the fact that this sort of configuration has existed successfully in other Major League parks for a while, amongst other things, has given us assurances that we're not going to have any issues, undue issues in that department.
All right, last question from Dan Connolly. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, for either Mike or Sig, the height of the wall, where did that come into play? Like, what factors went into deciding what would be the proper height?
I think the height that we're going to see is the natural result of truncating the seating ball and extending the outfield play back in those areas. From my standpoint, we think it's going to be beneficial to keep for the fan experience, to keep the fans in that front row right on top of the action, to be able to look right down onto the field and preserve the intimacy in that part of the ballpark. And I also think that the high fence or high wall in that area, as I said, will lead to some exciting plays and some extra base hits that we haven't gotten in that part of the park because of the amount of balls that have just turned into home runs there, even though they wouldn't have been in other Major League parks. And also the goal of this was to move our batted ball outcomes in this part of the park more towards the fairness and neutrality that we see everywhere else, So having a couple extra feet on the wall helps